Let's start off with a roll call. Karen, please.
Dr. Beers,
Here.
Mr. Ramey,
Here.
Mr. Katowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
all here.
This meeting is a meeting of the West Geauga Local School District Board of Education in public. We're operating under the provisions of the amended substitute House Bill 197 for the purposes of conducting the West Geauga Local School District's business, and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public remarks during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Please use the chat room function located at the bottom of the webpage if you'd like to be recognized for the public remarks. Remember that this is a time to address the board. It is a 5-minute per person, 30-minute total limit. It is not a time for discussion with the board, just for bringing your opinions to the board. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, changes and additions to the agenda. I believe we've got one change. Is that correct, Karen?
That is correct, sir. It's been added to your agenda. It's related to personnel matters.
Okay, so that's, which item is that? 7? They'll be under
8
8.
will be on 801 and
Okay.
802.
Can we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
I don't believe we have any reports or presentations tonight. Is that correct, Rich?
Yes.
Jim, has anybody registered to for public remarks? Jim, you're on mute.
Thank you. I see no
ironic.
one in the chat room.
I'm sorry, what?
No one is in the chat room.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to routine items, number 5. Karen?
Resolution 09319 to approve routine matters of the West Geauga Board of Education to include the August 2020 financial statements, minutes, and club classified substitute list.
So moved. Second.
Any
And-
questions? Any discussion, Karen, about any of the financial statements?
Yeah, this is the second month of the fiscal year. We have received most of our taxes for the first half or the second half of the collection of 2019. So you're going to see a larger cash balance. We're also, these are inclusive of the Newberry receipts are in here, as well as their bank accounts have now all been incorporated in there. If you turn your attention to the food services report F, I'm sorry. This is, as you know, in my previous reports to the board, we've had a new program that's in place. This is our revenues, because revenues were down, but we have a new program in place where all students are allowed to receive a free lunch and breakfast. So those revenues, we haven't received those yet. We'll start getting those from the USDA. They'll start reimbursing us for those in the month of September. So until then, you're not, for the month of August, you didn't see those. We're also seeing that we have some fixed costs and expenditures. That's the reason for the resolutions 801 and 802 tonight. That would reduce some of the staffing and move them into other positions if available, and one RIF. so that we're reducing the expenditures in the food services. We're still anticipating that we will have a loss in food services if we don't come back to school full force. But right now, the USDA is looking at a new program to extend the free lunches and breakfast through the end of the year. We just don't know whether that's going to happen. That's obviously something that Congress will have to look at as well.
Okay, any questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Gutowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Sorry, yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Resolution 09320 to approve warrants for August 2020.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Gutowski.
Yes.
Resolution 09321 to approve the permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2021.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
This is updating we passed our temporary appropriation in June. This is updating our appropriation for our permanent appropriation as needed by September 30th. This will be sent over to the county. This includes increases we had our COVID expenses for staff and related supplies and services.
Okay. Dan, Chet, as Finance Committee, do you have anything else you want to add to this?
Nope.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to hear my driveway alarm. Sorry about that. Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Gutowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
There is a presentation that was presented as part of that as well, so you can review that. And if you have any questions, just give me a call. Resolution go ahead. Resolution 09322 to approve a revised service agreement between West Geauga Local Schools and PSI Associates for the 2021 school year. This will be for St. Helens.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? This is basically a pass-through kind of thing, correct, Karen?
That's correct. It's part of their auxiliary funds.
Right, and they make the decision as to who they're hiring and that kind of thing.
We review that. If it's in a compliance with the rules and regulations, then that's when you will approve it. Yes.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Thorson,
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Gutowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
You want to take this one, Dr. Marquardt?
323.
Yes.
323. Resolution 323 is to approve a contract between the West Geauga Board of Education and the West Geauga Education Association. The terms of the contract are from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? I noticed that the attachment says TA, but this is the full contract, Rich?
Yeah, the TAs are incorporated into it.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you all for continuing to work and get this thing wrapped up. Another thing to get behind us and get moving forward so that we can further the education of the kids that are entrusted to us. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Gutowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
No.
Moving on to personnel resolutions.
Resolution 324 is to approve a temporary assignment of a classified staff member.
So moved. Second.
Any questions, discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Resolution 325 is to declare a reduction in force of a classified position for the 2020-2021 school year.
So move. Second.
Any discussion?
I could just clarify that this is a partial reduction for this individual. The individual is still employed with West G Schools.
Okay.
They
And this
intend to
again,
remain employed, Rich?
Pardon me?
They intend to remain employed
Yes,
in spite
yes.
of the reduction?
Yes,
He's currently a bus driver.
This was for a new position for one of the bus drivers.
and again, is related to the food service staffing issues that we have.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 326 is to approve supplemental contracts for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved. Second.
And this is a list that you guys have gone through relative to certain things that we need for sure. I believe in the past you said there were some that you were kind of holding off on to see how things went during the school year.
Correct. These are positions that are either full-time positions, whether we were in person or remote, these positions would be needed. And then some of them are also ones that would relate to seasonal activities. But these are all positions that we feel are necessary for the current school year.
Yeah. Any questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Resolution 327 is to approve service contracts for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved. Second.
Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Okay, believe then we're on to policy and program resolutions, which there are none at this point. So then on to the superintendent report. Dr.
Well,
Marco.
my report tonight is brief. I would just like to give the board a little bit of an update on where we are with the superintendent's committee that deals with the future of the Newberry School campus. Give you a little bit of an insight into where we are and where we have to go yet with this. As you recall, when you charged me with forming this committee, you had asked that there be a report at the end of September or early October. So tonight, what I'd like to do is give you sort of a prelude into what that report is, and then talk to you a bit more about it in October when we have a bit more information. There were 3 meetings held with the superintendent's committee that deals with the Newberry property. Those committee meetings were on July 30th, August 20th, and September 17th. And there were really 2 main outcomes of those meetings. One was a reaffirmation of the desire on the part of some Newberry residents, with the backing, I believe, of the Newberry Board of Trustees, or at least a portion of them, to establish a community center on a portion or all of that property. That was one of the recurrent themes that we heard in each of the meetings that we had. There was discussion around this and its feasibility and how it might take shape. Then secondarily, there was also a desire raised by the committee that the West Geauga Board of Education engage the services of a real estate consultant to look at some of the other possibilities that perhaps we weren't seeing for the property. In other words, when we looked at the community center that was being proposed by some of the Newberry residents, there were a certain finite set of activities that might take place at that community center. And what we wanted to make sure of was that we weren't being blind to some other more global opportunities with regard to the property. I think that the community center piece is very much alive and well in terms of the discussions that are ongoing regarding the future of that. But we also are in the process of trying to find someone in the real estate area who can give us some ideas of what the opportunities would be for development of that property. If, let's say, the Board of Trustees were to take over a portion of the property and perhaps one of the buildings, would there be some opportunities to develop the remainder of the property? So along those lines, we've solicited questions from the members of the committee that we would like to use to interview the real estate firms that have expressed an interest in doing this. I'd like to have those interviews next week and decide on a person to bring to the board who could accomplish this task for us. Once we get the firm on board, we would like to look at some of the ideas that they would have for the property. We certainly want to engage in discussions with the Newbury Township trustees along the way, because we will need their cooperation and their help, particularly to explore some of the options if there would be any zoning changes necessary, for instance. And I would like to then give a full report to the board at the October 26th board meeting of some of the options that we've had and where we are in terms of discussions with the real estate firm and with the Newbury Township Board of Trustees. But at this stage of the game, just to recap briefly, we have a list of firms that are interested in doing the work for us, and we have compiled a series of questions that we are going to be using to interview those firms when we to determine which one would best suit the needs of the board in terms of this particular project.
Do you have that criteria that you used, Rich, for the questions?
The questions were proposed by several different people. They were some who were familiar with the concept of economic development that are working in the county in that. And there are others that are involved in engineering. And then there are some others that were just interested members of the committee. But what we were trying to do was to determine which of the firms would be best suited to come up with a plan for the property, and then also to engage the various stakeholders that would need to be part of that discussion. And could also have some familiarity with the potential uses of the property, and then also of the legal channels we'd have to go through to determine whether those uses were feasible.
So that's your criteria for choosing who's going to market the property, or if you go in that direction?
It's the determination of the people who are going to do the study, which is sort of the optimal use study for the property. Some of those firms are interested also in being the ones who would market the property. They put together sort of a menu of activities for us, Dan, and then they've also stated that in their fees, if they were to be the ones chosen to market the property, that they would be able to apply that fee toward the sales commission for the property. But the questions right now that we have are somewhat disjointed because there's a whole series of them. And what I'll be going through those is to see which ones are to weed out any of the redundancy in the questions, because the questions now are basically designed to ferret out, number one, what are the qualifications of the firms that have applied? And then number two, what is their ability to accomplish what we wish to see accomplished? One of the things I'm finding when I look at them and I look at who's applied, in some cases, the scope of work that they anticipate is much greater, I think, than what we need. For instance, we're looking here at a property that's 40 acres. So if you're looking at a property that's closer to 1,000 acres and that has some potential sites that would be zoned for industrial development, some for residential, and some for agricultural, that's a very different and more complicated animal than what we're looking at here, because we're looking at, when all is said and done, probably a parcel of land that if you carve out the piece for the community center might be 20, 25 acres. So I think that in some cases, the proposals we're getting are proposals that are investing more than what we need at this point in time. What I'd like to see is, can someone identify some of the potential uses for the property that we might not have envisioned, and can they guide us through the process of what it would take to make the property eligible for that kind of development, all of which really hinges on the involvement of the Newbury Township Board of Trustees if there are any zoning changes that are required to be made.
Rich, what kind of timeline are you asking the, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What kind of timeline are you asking the
Well,
company,
because of
the
the limited
consultants to
scope
work
of
on
this,
it?
they're saying they could get it done probably in about 2 weeks once we select a firm. And that's why I put it on for the October 26th board meeting, because I didn't want to rush it and say we could have it for the 12th, because I don't think we could. But I think if we can make a selection of a firm within the next week, and the fees are not great with this, as you can imagine. I think we're looking in the area of around $7,500, and I think that might even be a little bit high. If we can engage a firm for that amount of money, I think that they would be able to turnaround on this limited a project, an end result and a product for us within about 2 weeks.
Okay, so the scope of what we're asking them for is pretty focused.
Very focused because it's such a small piece of land. I mean, some of the questions that we've gotten from people are more questions that are akin to the transfer of property. Would you do a wetland study, et cetera? Well, if it were required.
What are we basically asking them to do? A market analysis of what the market would bear for that property, the uses?
Right, and you know, certainly the potential for the property depends to some extent on the zoning of the property. There's been discussions right now, the property reverts to residential. Is there a possibility for rezoning that would allow us to have, you know, a more dense residential development there? Is there a possibility that we might be able to go with light industrial or commercial rezoning? Those are questions that really don't rest in our hands. They rest in the hands of the Newbury Board of Trustees. So before we get too far along in the process, once we have an idea of what those potential uses of the property could be, we have to have some serious discussions between the West G Board of Education and the Newbury Township Board of Trustees to see their willingness also to work with us on this. And perhaps I'm hopeful that there can be perhaps a deal struck that would be to the benefit of both entities, both the Newbury Township Board of Trustees and also West Geauga Schools.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay. Dan, I'd be happy to send you the questions if you want to see them, because I can show you the ones we have. You know, with your background in real estate, you might be able to ferret out some of the better ones for me. I mean, I have an idea of what I think are good, but.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could. Thank you.
Sure, I'll send them to you tomorrow.
Yeah, you may have some particularly insightful types of questions that we could ask, Dan.
Well, some of them, to be honest with you, some of the questions are of more technical nature, particularly for those that are related to economic development. That while I think I can siphon out the gist of it, they're language that I'm not familiar with. It's like when we talk to laymen about educational terminology. Oftentimes we assume that they know what we mean when they don't. I think in this particular case, the person who was composing it might have assumed that I knew some of the terminology more than I do. So
It couldn't possibly have as many acronyms, though.
I don't know. Every field has its acronyms, Ben.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Anything else?
No, that's really it. I guess I can say that I continue to say that I really feel that our start to the school year has gone incredibly smooth. I'm very, very grateful to a whole lot of people for that. I'm grateful to the administrators because I know they put in a great deal of time summer behind the scenes getting it ready. I am tremendously grateful to our teachers because they've come in and worked in under conditions and at tasks that they were never asked to do before. And it was certainly a challenge and they rose to that challenge. I'd also like to thank our support staff because if we hadn't had them, our buildings wouldn't be any place that we could occupy. They've done a great job of keeping our buildings clean and safe and sanitized, and we really appreciate that. And then also I really feel that I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to our families because I have never in my life seen kids that behave like our kids behave. And you know, our kids are kids and they can all be ornery at times. I don't even see that this year. The kids are sitting there in their masks and they're like little angels. They're sitting and behaving better in their masks than I would be if I were sitting in their chairs and wearing a mask. So I have to give a tip of the hats to the kids themselves, to the teachers who are monitoring them, to the parents who raised them, because we absolutely have absolutely wonderful kids. If you were never convinced of it, all you have to do is go in our schools and our classrooms now and watch our kids. And they're absolutely fantastic bunch of kids. And to the kids who are at home on virtual schooling, I don't want to leave them out either. And I don't want to leave those parents out because it's a challenge for our teachers. It's a challenge for them also. And it's all new territory for them. And I think that overall we're doing very, very well. And I'm proud of all our kids, the ones that are in school and the ones that are at home. So thank you.
Bill,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we could, I know that we've got on the website, we've got pictures of, the kids outside and keeping a distance, but doing their things. And but maybe for the next board meeting, could we put a video together or something that would go out to the community, just kind of showing some of what's going on in the classrooms and so people get a real feel for how well things are going and how the kids are just adapting They're much more adaptable than people think they are. But I think we need to share that with the community and for them to know, for us to know, and for them to
Yeah.
know what's going on.
I think that's a good idea, Kathy.
Also might be a good idea for us to showcase a few of our little guys who aren't here because they're doing some really cool things at home. And they're-
Sure. No, I'm not trying to say just.
No. I was
and-
sort of taken off on your idea because I'm
Yeah.
thinking perhaps we don't do enough showcasing what our kids are doing at school or at home. And I also think when we talk about athletics, it's interesting. We hear from people who get frustrated because they can't get into to observe our athletic contests. I spoke to someone today who's a Newberry resident who's new to West G, and he goes, I can't wait till being able to attend the football games and get into the basketball games and stuff. He said, we really want to support the schools and be a part of that. And I know this person, I've known him for many years. He will be a great supporter of all of our activities in our schools. And I think that we sometimes don't realize how much work went into making this year as close to normal as it is. It's not normal, guys. It is absolutely not normal. And I think to the credit of our staff here and of our kids here, they made it look easy. And believe me, it was anything but easy. It's one of the hardest things that I've ever done.
Yeah. Well, let's showcase that in a way of saying that and giving the credit where credit is due.
I agree.
I think we've got the technology to be able to do these things now. And I've been on a number of Zoom meetings and calls, as we all have. And it's amazing to me. I mean, the Land Trust Alliance has virtually turned Rally, which is their total all over the United States, which was supposed to be in Portland, Oregon this year, into a virtual meeting for over 3,500 people. And how they are conducting workshops for that number of people and putting this all together is beyond me, but they are. And it's not just because the staff has learned how to do it, but it's because this whole pandemic has forced the technology to be able to develop for these things to happen. And so let's take advantage of it and let's use it and share with the community as much as we can.
I think it's a great idea. I'm glad you came up with it and brought it up. I think, Rich, we ought to look at the buses too. I mean, because some people are going to wonder, they're going to wonder two things. Why are they seeing so few kids on the bus? And are the kids safe? Are the buses overcrowded? So they're going to be, wondering about that too, I'm sure.
So go on the bus with the camera and
Yeah.
Good.
Tonight, you mentioned that. I was looking out the window here when one of the buses came back between runs, and on the bus, there's somebody going along with one of the backpacks and spraying all the seats. And I think, boy, there's so much extra being done this year that I'm so grateful to everyone who's doing it, because we really have had people take this seriously and to take on the added responsibilities willingly. I've just none of us could have done it working in isolation this year. This truly, more than just about anything I've ever done, I think ever in my entire career, which is a long career. I think this pandemic has required greater cooperation and more teamwork than anything I've ever attempted. And
Rich, also, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I just said I'm proud of our team.
Well, I just want to say though that I think that this video, this community outreach, will also help people understand where the money's going, because it's very expensive to do this.
Exactly.
And we have to let the community know what's happening and where that money's going. And this is part of that, as they see the person with the backpack spraying, as they see the reduced load, as they see classrooms with fewer kids and so on. I mean, all of that is where their tax money is going, and they need to know it, because they have to have confidence that we're doing the best thing for the kids. We're doing the best thing with their tax dollars.
Yeah, good. Ben, I was just going to say the same thing, that I think, you don't want to make it be the highlight of it, but I think when you show those kinds of things and you say, we had to buy these electrostatic or whatever the gizmos are, and we haven't seen it, but I'd like to see it, and share that with the community of these are the things that we've done, and we've spent, like we talked about a couple of meetings ago, of close to $1 million on the, that kind of equipment and the additional staffing and I don't think we want to highlight more of what's going on in the classroom, but what Ben just said is exactly right. We continue to need to inform the community of what this is costing us.
And the benefit, obviously.
Yeah,
And the
right,
benefit. Yeah, there you
right.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's because of the cooperation that Rich was mentioning that we've been able to get back into school and have roughly, what, 70% of our kids in the classroom?
Between 70 and 75, I'd say.
Yeah.
And we know that there are a lot of districts around us that are not back in the classroom at all yet. And there's a lot of people that are wishing that their kids were in the classroom. And we don't have everybody there, but we've got an awful lot, and we've got the ones that wanted to be there in there. So,
And as you're saying, Bill, it's not like they're back in the classroom simply because we want them to be in the classroom. They're back in the classroom because the administration has created a safe environment for kids
yeah.
and for teachers too. And, you know, we certainly don't want to forget our teachers, who are really the people who are most at risk in this entire scenario.
And the bus drivers.
And the bus drivers, geez,
These are
yeah.
the plans, but it's the people who work with the kids that made the plans work. I mean, you know, we came up with the ideas, but it's the groups that are in touch with the kids every day who really are, they're in the trenches. And they're the ones that are making it work. The one thing that I would like to say also is sort of a tip of the hat. In some schools, what you might find is the kids have gone virtual, and that the parents then have, you know, second thoughts about it and want the kids back into school. We've had very few parents requesting for the kids to come back live when they're on virtual. And I think that's a credit to the programming we've set up for the kids virtually. It's a very, very different animal than what we had last spring when we had to suddenly convert to an online format, because we've had time to build in much more consistency and to some extent more training for some of the staff and a more defined curriculum. And so I think that it's a credit to the teachers and to the parents who are home, because if you think that, you know, I had one mom say to me, I think it's too much to expect, you know, a second grader to be online all day. And I said, well, I do too. I mean, that's why you're there. You know, I mean, the kids can't do it by themselves. They have to have support from a mom or a dad or a grandparent, because we limited the screen time of the kids. We know it's not good for kids to be online all day long, but what we have now is a consistent schedule where kids are online working on projects and coming back online for rechecks with their teachers, et cetera. They're broken into smaller groups. It's a lot of work. And if anybody thinks that, you know, this is an easier task for our staff, it's not an easier task. A lot of our middle school and high school teachers are teaching a class in person. They're teaching a virtual component to that class at the same time. So they have kids on their computer that they're teaching while they're also teaching their main class. That's tough. That's not easier than what they had before. That's harder.
Well, and in addition, I just was up yesterday and I wanted to come in and see the new entrance into the middle school. And I mean, you know, we have done that, but oh my gosh, we should have done it a long time ago. I mean, how safe was it to have people coming into the building and walking through the cafeteria and who knows where but you know, we've done these things and moved in a safer environment because of COVID, but also just a safer environment all around. So you know, how many buildings, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I how many school buildings have an entrance that the office is not right there? And how many years did we not deal with that? It was wrong. Luckily, we didn't have a problem. But
Well, you know, it's funny, Kathy, when you were involved with that in like '94, it was a different world, right? I mean, I'm assuming that
yeah.
it wasn't on anybody's radar.
No, and back, I was talking with a friend who went to West G, and she totally remembered where the office was back when she was in school and knew right where it was, which was right adjacent to where it is now. So, you know, we moved things around and changed the offices and had the board offices in there. And I mean, the transitions we made because of, for good reasons, but I don't know that we, as far as the middle school was concerned, that we considered, and the safety of, and allowing people to come into the building, we trusted, and luckily we trusted our good community and our good folks, not to take advantage of, but we're correcting that. I think we're on the right path. So kudos to the team, kudos to our whole, the staff for making that happen and for doing it so well.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that morphed into board reports, but is there anything else from the board that you guys feel like we need to mention at this point? Okay, then I believe we will go to executive session. So the Board of Education of West Geauga Local School District hereby adjourns to executive session at 7:37 relative to personnel matters and compensation, conference with legal counsel related to pending or imminent court action, and negotiations. Don't believe there will be any action taken coming out of the executive session. We'll invite Karen and Rich and Nancy. Anybody else that we need? Rich?
I don't think at this point in time, I think we're fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I so move. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes?
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for being here.
Hey, no problem. Just in time. The debate's getting ready to start.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Because clearly the Indians aren't playing. 7-2.
No kidding. I see that. So what do you do?
Good night, all. I move we adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. I presume Karen has called the roll. I didn't hear her. Did you,
Karen,
Jim?
you're muted.
No,
You're
she's on mute.
Muted.
unmuted now.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
We also,
Kathy motioned, I second. Everybody said yay. Good night.
Good night.
good night.
Good night, guys.